I just want to be left alone.
I'm not a trans woman, I'm a woman.
If trans women aren't women, then is this big croissant not a croissant? Of course it's a croissant. It's made out of butter and dough just like any other croissant.
So the UK has just ruled that the term woman is referring to a biological woman. Some people are upset at it, some people are praising it, but in this video we're going to get into it all in a couple of different perspectives on it, because there's a lot to dive into when it comes to this topic, because to me, I've never understood it, because they're saying trans women are women, but if trans women are women, why is there such thing as trans? You get what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with being a trans woman, to me at least. Like, you can be a trans woman, but you're not a woman, because a woman's a biological female. That's the line of order. So without further ado, if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe and let's dive right into this.
What does the UK Supreme Court ruling mean for trans women, and how will it affect trans men? The UK Supreme Court has ruled that the protected characteristic of sex as outlined in the Equality Act refers to biological women and not trans women.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
He added that transgender people still have protection against discrimination under the law, but is this enough?
Yeah, it's like, if we're saying we need to protect women and women's rights, okay, well, what is a woman? If you're saying men and women are different and we need to be protecting women's rights and making sure women are getting their fair pay, this and that, okay, who are you talking about? Because if you're also saying and advocating that any man can identify and just say they're a woman, then that means woman is useless. That it has no definition. You need a foundation to have a definition. And when the foundation is sex, it's very clear, because there's only two sexes, male and female. Is there intersex? Yes, but that's very rare. I just feel like when it comes to this case and you need in the laws and you need a firm standpoint, biological woman makes sense, because you're transitioning from one thing to another. And even then, you can never transition your chromosomes and your biology. It just is what it is.
Brought forward on appeal by Gender Critical Group for Women Scotland, which has reportedly been supported by author J.K. Rowling, against the Scottish Government after a previous ruling in 2022 that found sex is not limited to biology. The question initially put forward was, is a person with a full gender recognition certificate which recognises that their gender is female a woman for the 2010 Equality Act? The Supreme Court has ruled sex in the Equality Act refers to biological sex only. This means the legal definition of sex and the legal definition of what a woman is, as stated in the Equality Act, is biological and does not include trans folks with a gender recognition certificate.
It's very interesting too, because like all the feminists, I don't understand it. I don't get it. How are you going to say you're defending women, you're protecting women, but you can't define it and you're saying anybody can become it? Why is it seen as hateful and bigoted now to protect women and women's rights in women's spaces, referring to biological women? Why is it now we're just overhauling all biological women's spaces? I don't understand it. And I feel like we got to this point because of how loose everything, honestly, we got to this point because you got people acting a fool and just saying, well, anybody can be anybody, it's fine. And you got grown men marching their way into women's spaces and saying, I'm a woman now. This is why we're here, truly.
I want to say there is a strong indicator that the words sex, man and woman have a biological meaning from the sections in the Equality Act that refer to sex, pregnancy and maternity discrimination. Judges have also differentiated between certificated sex and biological sex in their ruling. It was decided that certificated sex, or sex attained by the acquisition of a GRC, is not the same as biological sex. They said they can identify no good reason why the Equality Act should apply to these complex heterogeneous groupings rather than to the distinct group of biological women and girls, or men and boys.
Yeah, if we're saying men and women are different and we need to protect women, why are we then going to erase women by saying trans women are women? They're trans for a reason, and even then you're not even transitioning fully because you can't change your sex. None of this should be hateful, none of this should be bigoted, none of this should even be an argument. Trans women are saying, I deserve to be protected. Okay, what about biological women, and why don't we protect them too? Especially the ones that are hip and hollering about how upset they are that trans women are blending in with them. They're not the same, and we know they're not the same because when it comes to the gay community, hello, you're gay for a reason. I don't want no damn taco, I want a churro. And it doesn't matter how you dice it up. If you manipulate your churro, your taco, and you turn your taco into a Crunchwrap Supreme, and you try to turn your churro into a what? I don't know, a sopapilla. Listen, Regardless how you splice it up, dice it, get in and out of the surgery, you aren't changing the organ. You're just not. And I'm sorry, me being gay is based off of like biological sex. And we need to know like what a man is and what a woman is. That's what being gay is. I don't understand why this is a confusion or why it's an argument. I genuinely don't get it. Pause, because I'm editing this video and this just happened. Court rules Ohio ban on gender affirming care can be enforced amid suits. So it's gone down to actual like laws. Like this isn't even just like a UK thing. This is an American thing too. Really all across the globe is where you're having this big battle between trans women and actual biological women. It says right here, the decision reversed a March ruling that blocked the law which bans counseling, surgery, and hormone therapy in the participation of trans girls in female sports. I feel like low key, I feel like an idiot even like saying this out loud because it makes me feel like I'm the crazy one. But correct me if I'm wrong, transgender girls are different from females. Because if you were a female, you would just be a female. There's no reason for you to be a transgender. And I feel like that should just be common knowledge that there is a difference between trans women and actual females. And really what this case points out and what this ruling does is highlight what we've talked about throughout this whole video is really, if we just left the children and the women alone, we would be fine. You know, women and children are the most protected, well, should be, and they kind of are basically the most protected class in our society. You know, some key examples is war. Typically female and children are off limits. When you think about going to jail, if you went to jail because you harmed a woman or you harmed kids, you're typically frowned upon inside the jail. And it is crazy to me that now we've gotten to a point where the transgender community at large is infiltrating children and female and ultimately altering what they are, because we protect children because they're vulnerable, they're still growing, they're learning. We don't want anything to happen to them. Hence why they can't smoke, hence why they can't drink, hence why they can't vote, because we know they are still growing and they are still learning. Same for women. They are just in generally smaller and weaker than men at large, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're just literally biologically different. And there's a reason why female sports exists in its own category. There's a reason why children are children. I don't understand this concept, and I'm glad that there are laws being put in place to protect actual children and actual women, because this idea that this view is transphobic, or that these people that are banning gender affirming care for minors is transphobic, it ignores all the people that actually do respect trans people. I have no problem with trans adults. I was, again, just at a bunch of concerts with my trans friends. Like, if you're a trans adult, I don't care what you do, but you're also not going to make me or make anyone make laws respect and mandate that they honor what you think you are, what you're trying to be, because that's never going to be the case. And I truly think if we just left the women and children alone, we would be fine. What we see here is that the left is arguing that, you know, the law discriminates against transgender youth by limiting access to healthcare. I don't understand how we all agree children are still growing, children are still learning, they're children, and they should be protected. You know, they can't drink, they can't smoke, they can't vote because they're actual children. And whether you're on the left, center, or right, none of us are the same person who we were when we were 13. 14, 15, we're constantly growing and learning, and I just don't understand. I can give a little nuance to the fact that, yeah, I'm still gay and I was gay back then, but being gay, it's not involving surgeries. It's not involving manipulating my body for the rest of my life. That's what trans is doing. And if you want to transition, do that as an adult when you know that's what you want to do. But as a child, you're not in the right mindset to make that decision, per all the people that are detransitioning. And then over here on the right, what are they saying? Wrote the stake and enforce House bill, which bans puberty blockers and hormone treatments for minors. The ban has caused tangible and irreparable harm to transgender minors, including it violates constitutional protections. Yeah, you can't, for the kids that are trans minors that end up growing up and like, actually, I never was trans and I was just a kid experimenting with different things, they can never go back. That's the missing point I think a lot of people have, is you can't go back from this. You really can't. And honestly, this is one of my favorite features and why I get my news from Ground News is because I can clearly see what the left, center, and right is always saying about a particular topic. And I don't have to rely on like a CNN or a Fox News because they're going to give me their bias. No, I can see the bias clearly pertaining to any story here on Ground News. So if you want to get involved, be sure to tap the link below. Scan a QR code here on the screen. Additionally, this isn't just for the United States. I mean, we're talking about a UK story in this video in totality. You can go right up here to the US edition. You can tap international, UK, Canada, Europe, so you can always get the news that matters to you. Additionally, my favorite spot on Ground News is called Blind Spot, and it's where you can see all the news that the left isn't talking about, but the right is. And on the other side, you can see all the news that the left is talking about, but the right isn't. Something that the left isn't talking about, but the right is Walmart to expand support for American-made products. I wish the left was talking about this, but they're probably not because this is sort of a win on Trump's tariffs and Trump's threats and plans to he's really pushing hard to supporting American businesses. And this is highlighting that you have the biggest corporation really in America saying they're going to support for more American made products. That's a huge win. And the left isn't talking about that at all. And right on the other side, something that the left is talking about but the right isn't, is right here where it says most say Trump is serious about Canada, Greenland, and third term. The right isn't talking about that at all, probably because the right doesn't really care about this and they're not taking Trump as serious. Where on the left, they are because he's a president and he's saying some of these things. And personally, that's where I feel like the communication can really use a big bump and just like being careful about what you're saying as president. If you really want to bridge this divide, then don't stir the pot. Don't be very memey and jokey. But yeah, the right isn't talking about that at all. But this is one of the many reasons why I love Ground News. If you want access to all the amazing tools and features that I've shown you in this video, be sure to tap the link below or scan a QR code here on the screen to get 40% off the Vantage plan this month only, which is the plan that I use that has all these features and tools that we've gone through in this video.
I've never felt unsafe around a trans woman, ever. My womanhood has never felt threatened by a trans woman, ever. And if your womanhood has, I think that speaks more to the fragility of your womanhood than anything about trans women. Because quite honestly, how pathetic to target one of the most oppressed groups in our society.
Why can't... Okay, first off, we've already gone through a bunch of female athletes who have felt annihilated and targeted from trans athletes. One being Riley Gaines in the locker room when you have fully endowed trans women exposing themselves and their schlongs out. You know, trans women spiking a volleyball and giving a girl a huge concussion. Trans women running into sports. I mean, there's a lot to get into, but this behavior and this rhetoric only adds to the divisiveness. Like, you're a biological woman harping at other biological women for not standing up for trans women because they're being marginalized, as if two things can be true at once. Women have been and are marginalized, biological women, and so are trans women. But just because y'all both, one's biological woman and one's trans woman, because you have that women in common, y'all should band forces? No, because y'all are completely different. I don't get it.
Loser behavior. And for all those people who say they care about women's sports and women's safety, where are you petitioning for more funding for women's sports? Where are you petitioning for better legislation to persecute sexual assault against women? Overwhelming majority of which is committed by cis men.
Cis men. Well, what is a trans woman? That's a whole man. Listen, just a little bit more understanding and nuance. It wouldn't be this big of a deal. It really wouldn't. If this woman, instead of being so up in arms, we need to protect our trans women, they are women. What is a woman then? Nobody can answer that question.
If trans women aren't women, then is this big croissant not a croissant? Of course it's a croissant. It's made out of butter and dough just like any other croissant. Oh, but there are biological differences. This croissant was born different. I'm not saying that there isn't a cosmetic difference between this croissant and this croissant, but they are both inarguably still croissants.
And you still arguably have male chromosomes. This is a horrible analogy. They're both croissants. One's just cosmetically different. Girl, you not just cosmetically different. You are down to the bones different, okay? Down to getting bits and pieces chopped up, sewed up, everything, your surgeries. Like, you're literally, no matter how far you go cosmetically, you would never be a croissant. You're a muffin. If you want this, ooh, you a cronut. That's what you is. You're a cronut. Cronuts are gas. Okay, if you want to take this route, croissants are women, donuts are men. You trying to be a cronut. You trying to blend it all. You switching things together. You trying to rebake yourself. You're a cronut. You will never be a croissant. You're a cronut.
Oh, but they're invading our bakeries and trying to brainwash our kids. But how? By teaching your kids there's more than one way to be a croissant? If anything, the existence of big and small croissants shows our kids how wonderful and diverse the world of pastries can be.
Yeah, there's different types of women and different types of men. And sometimes out there's cronuts. There's lots of different sized donuts and toppings. There's lots of different types of styles of croissants, chocolate croissants, almond croissants, butter croissants. Ooh, I'm getting hungry. There's lots of different kinds, right? We can teach our kids that, but to teach our kids, hey, little donut, you can become a cronut if you want to, anytime you want, without understanding the complications that come to being a cronut. Please, they're not one and the same. They're genuinely not.
Next thing you know, you're going to start demanding that big croissants use separate cafes and identify as scones. So before I demolish this delicious and very valid pastry, repeat after me. Big croissants don't affect me in the slightest. If anything, it's pretty cool that they exist. Maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to find a big croissant and order it and dunk it in hot chocolate. Okay, my metaphor is falling apart, but you get it.
It's been falling apart. You're a cronut. You're not gonna say you're equal to being a woman, and that is so disrespectful. I don't see how it can be twisted any other way. It's disrespectful to say something is one thing when it's obviously not. You can acknowledge you are an advocate for trans rights and you are a trans woman, therefore you're not a woman. If you're a woman, you'd just be a woman, would you not? If you are a woman, you would just be a woman, but you're not. You're a trans woman. You're a T-girl, you're a doll. That's fine. That's fine. But acknowledge what you are. And if more people just acknowledge what they were, we wouldn't be having this big of a discussion if everybody just kept it real. You're not a woman. You're a trans woman. Leave it at that. And where regular women and where biological women start to get their rights impeded on and taken advantage of, let them be and leave them alone.
I mean, some of us, the pioneers in sex reassignments, when we underwent that many decades ago, we forgot that we were men. I tried to become a man all my life. I couldn't. I literally couldn't. It is not a choice. We were born like this. There's a medical procedure to go through. There is female hormones every transgender takes, which actually feminize every single cell of their body. So even the biology eventually changed. I'll give you one example for your information.
That's not a lie. Yes, by taking these hormones, your biology is changing, but your biological sex will never change. What you got down south is either a male part or a butchered male part. It is what it is. That's never gonna change. So I will give nuance to that. It is a medical condition. Some people are born with a gender dysphoria and they go through these loops and hoops to kind of feel like they should be feeling. They feel like they should be a woman, even though you're born a man, whatever, sure. But leave it to the adults that do that, and then don't get mad that you have actual biological women that get offended and hurt by trans women taking advantage of women's spaces. I think this ruling doesn't necessarily erase trans women. I think it just confirms and validates trans women even more because you are a trans woman. It gives a basis to biological women and trans women, and that's perfectly fine, because if not, the term woman is rendered useless, and it is what it is.
Intimate relationship with a medical doctor in my youth who never realized I was transgender female, and that's to give you an example. So how you expect me and people like me to go into some male changing room, and I mean, this is a ridiculous. Really.
And I understand, there is a lot of trans women now that are sitting here like, well, damn, like, how do you expect me to go into a men's locker room if I can't go into a women's locker room? But like, I feel like that's just a part of being trans. Like, this is one of the battles that you have to just accept, because there's a lot of biological women who don't want to share space with penises. That's it. If we're breaking it down, that's just what they don't want it. They don't. And that's their right as a biological woman.
Samantha, let Maya answer your point.
So a gender recognition certificate, in order for somebody to get one, they don't have to have surgery, they don't have to take hormones. All they need to have is a diagnosis, and you can get a diagnosis now for a few £100s on the internet. So, and obviously people who are running public services or people who are using services, for example, if a woman wants a female doctor, she should be able to have a female doctor. And if a man wishes he was a woman and wants to be in that situation, the woman can't ask what surgery have you had and doesn't want to know. You know, the last thing we want to do is talk about somebody's intimate details.
Facts. That's valid. That points to how it's the people taking advantage of the system that have just ruined everything. Because for someone like that has gone their whole life being trans and has run into little issues, it's because like you did your due diligence to really assimilate as hard as you could. And I think that's why you skated by for so long. But now, like she said, the other person said, you can just go online, buy a certificate, boom, you trans, and then boom, you can do whatever you want with women. That's crazy work.
Unfortunately, when you have rules, they have to be clear.
Samantha, let me just ask you, after today's ruling, will you continue to call yourself a trans woman or a woman?
I'm not a trans woman, I'm a woman. As simple as that. We don't have a hierarchy of women. All women are equal, and really this is an issue where it is just really by some, with respect, either hate group or somebody trying to actually incite hatred. Because...
Maya, let me just put that back to Maya.
No. That's not real life. That's not how this is going to work. That's not how this is going to fly. That's insanity to say, I'm not a trans woman, I'm a woman. If you are a woman, why did you feel the need to transition? Because you transition. If you're a woman, why do you feel the need to be trans?
Do you accept and respect Samantha's definition of herself there?
People can use whatever words they like to describe themselves. Some people call themselves non-binary. But the point is, when you're interacting with other people, with the state, as an employer, as a service provider, or sharing spaces, then the fact that Samantha wants to call himself a woman or non-binary or any of 56 genders is something I can respect as a form of self-expression, but not as a reason to come into a women's space or play in a women's sport, or be in a women's rape crisis centre.
However you want to describe yourself as an adult, do you. But when it comes to the state in different scenarios, in locker rooms, sports, waxing centers, it's biology.
You just referred to Samantha as a man there. Do you not accept that what Lord Hodge said today is that trans people are still protected from discrimination and harassment under the Equality Act, and therefore you describing Samantha as a man there could be viewed as discriminatory or harassing?
No, it's not. What Lord Hodge said was the Equality Act protects trans people from harassment and discrimination. So that means things like you shouldn't be fired at work, you shouldn't be paid less than another person, you shouldn't be refused a booking at a restaurant or refused to be able to rent a flat, for example. But it doesn't mean that other people have to pretend that you are the sex that you're not, or to refer to you in the way that you want to be referred to as.
From Samantha.
Come on now.
Samantha.
What is the danger of this group that is really mostly marginalized and mostly frightened and so on the general public or indeed women? I mean, what is the fear here from me and other people like me? What's so frightening about that?
I mean, I haven't talked about fear, but I mean, for example, men do the majority of crime, the majority of violent crime, 98% of sex crimes. And that's one of the reasons why we have single-sex spaces and services, why we have men's prisons and women's prisons. It's to protect women. And men who identify as transgender, who identify as trans women, are a vulnerable group. They're a vulnerable group of men, and they can be kept safe in men's prisons, for example.
Right, Maya Forstater, I know many people would disagree with what you've just said, but thank you very much.
She spit facts. It is what it is. We have separated men and women because women are vulnerable. They have been at risk, and now we have biological men taking advantage of it. It's that simple. Ooh, she ate. She snapped. That was very respectful and very like well spoken, with a straight face. Like, no, this is just it is what it is, very bluntly. Because she's not wrong. Men do make up most of the crimes and sex crimes. So it's like we've seen the cases of people getting pregnant in jail by trans people, people getting assaulted by trans people. Not blanketing that all trans people are like that, but just to share, like, hey, like in the beginning, it's so easy to just call yourself trans and just do whatever you want. Now we're just rolling it all back. We're just stripping it all away.
I'm pretty gutted by this ruling. I think it undoes a really important principle that was put in place 20 years ago, that determined that if you obtain a gender recognition certificate, then you are, for almost all purposes in law, considered to be your acquired gender. It is important to say that this ruling only impacts trans people who have a gender recognition certificate. It doesn't have any impact on those of us who haven't been able to obtain one yet, and actually that's the majority of us. The process of obtaining one is so convoluted and difficult to get. I think what's really important that any bodies who are making decisions as a result of this ruling keep in mind the fact that as trans people, we are just trying to go about our daily lives.
We're gonna go to the next one, but I want you to realize, like, this trans person, just to ask trans people, it's a common theme in this video. Are you trans or are you a woman? If you're a trans woman, that means you're not a woman because you're transitioning for a reason. And even though you're transitioning, you are still nothing more than a very, 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 very flamboyant cosplaying a biological man. That's not hateful. That's not bigoted. I have trans friends. I respect them. We hang out. We kick it all the time. But they know what they are. If more people just acknowledge what they were, we wouldn't be here today. We really wouldn't. If you just acknowledge what you were and stop trying to demand all these hate speech laws, demand to be invited in these spaces, stop crying to victim here, victim that, we wouldn't. And it's just funny to me how they keep referring to themselves as trans women, but they're also arguing that trans women are women, but you're transitioning for a reason because you never were originally a woman. So clearly you're not the same.
I don't care too much about being recognized as a woman because I just don't want to be recognized at all. I just want to be left alone. And I think that's what we all want after this war against our tiny community where we are less than 1% of the population. And it's been a constant onslaught against us and we just want to be left alone. I think it's going to affect a lot more people than just trans people's lives, and that's actually what I'm looking forward to, because I think when people realise that it's going to be butch lesbians being asked why they're in women's bathrooms, because that's already happening. I have many friends who have been stopped in bathrooms who are just cisgender, born women, lesbians.
It's an extremely valid point. Is we are going to get to a point where now the masculine butch lesbians, they're starting to run into way more problems now because of the trans women. But like, it's crazy because I feel like it never used to be that big of an issue until all the trans stuff started happening and people started gaming the system. Because even then, if you got a stud, yeah, you got some studs and some butch. If you don't know what a stud and a butch is, it's just like the manly lesbians. You got them existing, but not, I want to say a good chunk of them, you can still tell it's a woman. There are some where it's like, is that a man? But some of them, and a lot of them still have the voice, but like they still have feminine characteristics. You can still see chest, you can still see a butt, you can still see like the feminine features, because like typically butches and lesbians aren't transitioning. They're just still a woman, they're just lesbian. So like, no shade, this person right here, you can tell is a man. All in all, it seems as though most people that are advocating and accepting and happy for what the UK just did, they feel as though trans women are not biological women because they're literally not biological women. And I don't know how else to spin it, twist it, or say it. And it's what's crazy is that it's typically, as we've gone through this video, the trans people saying, oh my gosh, it's so hateful, they're so bigoted, I'm so tired of this, yada yada yada. Have you just tried to say, actually, I am a trans woman, I am different from biological women, I want to give biological women the space to be, I want to pin on who they are, we can coexist together and it be fine. Have you thought about that? Are you giving more attention, giving more praise to the people who are saying, no, trans women are women and this is my space too, just as equal as yours, when it's just a costume and you're cosplaying as a biological woman, and there are things that biological women only go through, only experience, that is specifically for them, that a biological man will never relate to or never understand, no matter how hard they try to be a woman. And I'm very curious what this means. Granted, this was in the UK. How does this translate to other world stages, other governments, and what's going to be played out? Because I don't see how defining a woman is defining a biological woman is seen as hateful, as if, again, as we talked about in this video, trans women aren't transitioning from one thing to another. You will never be that end result, but you're trying to transition because you recognize and you understand you are not a woman. So just keep it real, keep it a buck, and we wouldn't be running into this problem as it is. Just let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious if you think this is hateful. Like, are you someone, let me know in the comments below, are you someone that will respect an adult trans woman as long as they respect and acknowledge you as a biological woman? I feel like most women would agree with that and understand that. So let me know your comments down below. If you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe. It helps the channel grow a ton. I cannot believe we're almost at 600,000 subscribers. Blows my mind. As always, I say this at the end of every single video that I make. I hope that you're taking care of yourself, your mental health, and your well-being. And you understand that as long as you lock in, focus on you and only you can achieve anything you put your mind to. It just takes a lot of motivation, dedication, and self-perseverance to really push through the crazy amount of crap that you may be going through. But keyword, going through. You're not stuck there, you're going through it. So with that being said, keep your head up, smile, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Deuces.